in the quietest corners of our collective consciousness, in that sacred space where dreams and ancestral memories intertwine like threads of light, lies the echo of a lost world. A story that from its first whisper in the mists of antiquity has held an unbreakable, almost magnetic fascination over the human soul. It is the undying legend, the luminous enigma of Atlantis. Its journey from a possible philosophical allegory at the dawn of Western thought to its current status as a cornerstone of alternative history and esoteric spirituality reveals more about our own deepest aspirations and our most secret fears than perhaps about any landmass sunk into the oblivion of the ocean. Atlantis has evolved far beyond being a simple lost city. It has become a powerful cultural symbol, an archetype encoded in our spiritual DNA that represents a state of being we long for, a technology we have forgotten, and a human potential we have yet to fully realize. It is, as someone has said, a vivid dream emerging from the strange and murky depths of human consciousness. Today, soul traveler, you who have felt the call of this enigma, we embark together on a deep exploration, not merely to search for an island on a map, but to attempt to decipher a message that resonates through the millennia, a message directed at us now. This is not just an exercise in archaeology or geography. The search for Atlantis, in its highest form, represents a profound and modern inquiry into our true origins, a story that dares to challenge conventional scientific paradigms, often perceived as spiritually empty. It is a quest that dares to ask, are we the final product of an accidental evolution, a cosmic fluke in an indifferent universe? Or are we perhaps the inheritors of an intentional creation, of a cosmic purpose, and of a lost potential that was once ours, and which, in the depths of our being, we long with every fiber to reclaim? There are those who argue that the crises of our modern world, war, division, imminent ecological collapse, are the direct result of a worldview based on the false assumptions of an incomplete science, a science that has forgotten the spirit. They argue that the key to our future lies precisely in the wisdom of our forgotten past. In this journey, we will explore perspectives that seek to demonstrate that our history is much grander, our heritage much richer, and our origins much more deliberate than we have commonly been told. Thus, the search for Atlantis inevitably becomes a search for the very soul of humanity. Today, we will not just unveil a legend, we will unveil a mirror. An obsidian mirror polished by time, reflecting not only our brightest light, but also our deepest shadow, what we were, what we regrettably became, and what perhaps, with wisdom gained, we are destined to become again.
All research into Atlantis, no matter how esoteric or alternative, must begin with the only primary chronicle that has survived the shipwrecks of time. A tale that it is said was passed with utmost care from the wise priests of ancient Egypt to an Athenian lawmaker, and has come down to us as the original blueprint, the seed from which the entire legend has sprouted. Imagine, if you can, a vast island continent, larger than Libya and Asia combined, majestically situated in the ocean beyond the Pillars of Hercules. that threshold we know today as the Strait of Gibraltar. Its lands were of legendary fertility, blessed with a perfect climate, with towering mountains in the north that protected it from cold winds, and a great oblong plain in the south, crisscrossed by an intricate network of irrigation canals that shone like silver veins under the sun. At the very heart of this land was its capital, a true marvel of engineering and art, built with concentric rings of land and water, like a sacred mandala etched upon the face of the planet. 3 rings of water surrounded 2 of land, and in the center, a sacred island where the main temple stood. Ingeniously constructed bridges connected the rings of land to each other, and a great canal, several kilometers long, stretched from the outer ring to the open sea, allowing the largest ships to sail directly into the bustling, beating heart of the city. The docks, filled with ships from all over the known world, were carved directly into the high rock walls of the circular moats, a vision of order and power. The architecture was a spectacle for the senses. The builders used white, black, and red-colored stones quarried from the island's core, creating buildings of breathtaking beauty that defied imagination. And the city was rich, immensely rich, in a mysterious and legendary metal, a metal that shone with a reddish gleam, like the heart of a sleeping volcano, whose name was orichalcum. Its value, the ancient account tells us, was surpassed only by that of gold. But Atlantis was not an isolated and peaceful city-state. It was the center of a formidable and expansive naval empire. Its military might had subdued many peoples, conquering parts of Libya to the very borders of Egypt and of Europe to the coasts of ancient Italy. Its imperial ambition, which grew ceaselessly, finally led it to attempt the conquest of the ancient and virtuous prehistoric Athens, an act of arrogance and hubris that would seal its tragic fate. In its beginnings, we are told, the Atlanteans were a people of extraordinary virtue. For many generations, as long as the divine nature in their blood remained pure and undiluted, they were obedient to the laws of the cosmos and maintained a deep and loving connection with the gods, from whose seed, it was said, they came. They despised everything except virtue and were not intoxicated by excessive luxury or the accumulation of wealth. They were a noble, wise, and balanced people, a true example for the world.
However, with the inexorable passage of generations, this divine heritage began to dilute. As the divine portion began to fade and human nature prevailed, they became unable to bear their immense fortune. They behaved in an unseemly manner, consumed by boundless greed, blind pride, and relentless aggression. Their power corrupted them from within, and this moral decay, this betrayal of their own luminous essence, provoked the wrath of the heavens. After their failed and arrogant attempt to conquer the virtuous prehistoric Athens, a divine punishment of unimaginable magnitude befell them. In a single day and night of misfortune, the great island of Atlantis was shaken by violent earthquakes and apocalyptic floods. And with a roar that must have shaken the entire world, it sank forever beneath the raging waves of the sea,
disappearing from sight and becoming the legend that today, thousands of years later, still summons and disturbs us. Since this primordial tale became known, the search for Atlantis has led explorers, dreamers, and researchers to every corner of the globe. Each theory attempts to align the clues of the ancient text with the features of the real world in a fascinating puzzle of geology, archaeology, and myth, a quest that is as much external as it is internal. One of the most intriguing proposals places Atlantis not in the Eastern Atlantic, but in the Caribbean, with the island of Cuba as its possible epicenter. This view suggests that the civilization did not simply sink beneath the waters, but was devastated by the cataclysmic impact of a comet at the end of the last ice age, approximately 13,000 years ago. The evidence presented for this theory is multifaceted and thought-provoking. Bridges are drawn between the original account and the mythologies of the indigenous peoples of North and South America, such as the Maya and the Quiche, whose oral traditions speak of a similar destruction by fire and water from the sky. Archaeologically, it points to the existence of supposed submerged urban ruins off the coasts of Cuba and the Bahamas, suggesting complex and planned urban development now covered by the sea. Furthermore, certain anomalous findings, such as the African features of the colossal Olmec heads or traces of cocaine found in some Egyptian mummies, are interpreted as possible evidence of pre-Columbian transatlantic trade that originated in this lost Caribbean civilization. Geologically, the core of this argument is the connection between the destruction of Atlantis and the formation of the mysterious Carolina Bays, a vast series of elliptical depressions that stretch along the Atlantic coast of the United States. It is argued that these strange formations were created by the impact of fragments from the same comet that annihilated the Atlantean civilization in the Caribbean.
In the age of satellite imagery, one theory has captured the world's imagination for its striking and almost undeniable visual impact. It identifies the capital of Atlantis with the Richat structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara in modern-day Mauritania, a circular scar in the desert that seems to gaze back at the cosmos. The topographical similarity is admittedly astonishing. The structure, with its almost perfect concentric rings of rock, bears an incredible resemblance to the description of the Atlantean capital. Geographically, the structure is south of a mountain range and opens onto a vast plain, which proponents of the theory argue could have been an ancient inland sea or an extension of the Atlantic Ocean in a remote past. The proposed date for the destruction of this civilization, about 11,600 years ago, aligns perfectly with the end of the Younger Dryas period, an era of intense global climate catastrophe that many researchers associate with the fall of Atlantis. However, this theory faces significant criticism. The main one is that the Richat structure is, according to conventional geology, a natural geological dome and lacks, to date, conclusive archaeological evidence to prove it housed an advanced city as described in the myth. Still, its image remains a powerful and provocative question mark.
Rather than focusing on a single location, an influential school of thought focuses on the event that destroyed an advanced global civilization, of which Atlantis may have been only a part, though perhaps the most important. This event is the Younger Dryas Cataclysm, which occurred between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago. From geology, evidence of catastrophic megafloods and geological scars around the world, particularly in North America, points to a cosmic impact event. It is postulated that this impact liquefied part of the Great Laurentide ice sheet and triggered a global deluge of biblical proportions, providing a scientific mechanism for the flood spoken of in countless myths around the world. Other researchers argue for a cosmic impact in the Southern Ocean about 12,800 years ago, which not only caused a worldwide flood, but was also the source of most of the water in our current oceans. They cite as proof the existence of canyons and rivers submerged at great depths, evidence of a pre-flood world with much lower sea levels. And from archaeology, this vision is complemented. The damaged but incredibly sophisticated megalithic structures in places like Peru, Bolivia, and Egypt are pointed out as the remains of this pre-cataclysmic Atlantean civilization, whose stone construction technology often surpasses our own, and whose wounds seem to speak of a cataclysm of unimaginable violence.
The search does not end there, for the shadow of Atlantis is long. There are those who have explored the bold possibility that Atlantis lies beneath the thick ice of Antarctica, a theory often linked to ancient and enigmatic maps, like that of Piri Reis, which seem to show the Antarctic coast free of ice, and to strange anomalies detected by modern satellites. Another fascinating perspective proposes that ancient Egypt was not so much the location of Atlantis as its main colony and heir. According to this view, Atlantean survivors, bearers of arcane knowledge, sought refuge in the fertile Nile Valley and rebuilt their civilization, leaving their wisdom encoded in the sacred geometry of the pyramids and in a global energy grid designed to stabilize the planet after the Great Cataclysm. As we can see, the map of Atlantis is not drawn on land, but on a sea of possibilities, each inviting us to look at our world and our history with new eyes, to question what we thought we knew, and to open ourselves to a past much richer and more mysterious than we ever imagined. Beyond the fascinating question of where Atlantis was, lies the even more fundamental and revealing question of who the Atlanteans were. The origin narratives proposed by modern researchers are divided into two distinct philosophical camps, each with profound implications for our understanding of history and human potential. One of the most influential currents in modern Atlantology postulates that the Atlantean civilization was not a purely terrestrial development, but the result of a direct, deliberate, and precise intervention by non-human intelligences. In this narrative, Atlantis is described as a large-scale cosmic experiment. Extraterrestrial beings, beings, sometimes identified with the Anunnaki of the ancient Sumerian tablets, arrived on Earth in a remote past. Finding survival on our planet difficult, they established, it is said, a treaty with another star race, often associated with the star Arcturus, to combine their own DNA with that of the indigenous humans who already inhabited the Earth. This act of advanced genetic engineering gave rise to the sons and daughters of the stars, a hybrid lineage that became the 12 founding families of Atlantis. Each of these families was assigned custody of one of the 12 regions of the continent and the sacred mission of maintaining the connection with one of the 12 great universal portals, with the aim of guiding the spiritual awakening of the planet. This vision is often linked to the enigmatic figure of Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, who is presented as an Atlantean priest king, an immortal being, bearer of this stellar legacy and supposed author of the legendary Emerald Tablets, which would contain Atlantean wisdom.
From this point of view, humanity as a whole was genetically modified by beings from other worlds, and this infusion of foreign DNA is the catalyst that separates us from other primates and endows us with our superior abilities. It is argued that the advanced genetics that give us our complex brain and sensitive nervous system are the result of an ancient and precise fusion of genes, an event that implies that something beyond evolution made our humanity possible, approximately 200,000 years ago. In direct opposition to this interventionist model is the school of thought that sees Atlantis as the pinnacle of achievement of an indigenous human civilization, a culture that arose on its own merits and reached extraordinary heights of development before being wiped from history by a devastating cataclysm. Proponents of this view insistently point to archaeological and geological evidence. Extensive research on the megalithic sites of Peru, Bolivia, Egypt, and other parts of the world leads them to argue for the existence of a pre-cataclysmic global civilization with stone construction technology superior to ours. The damaged but incredibly precise ruins of these places would be the remains of this lost people. Their work on the enigmatic elongated skulls of Paracas, with their unique genetic markers and physical anomalies, suggests the existence of a distinct and ancient human race, possibly the remnants of this Atlantean people. From geology, a scientific basis is provided for this theory. The dating of water erosion on the Great Sphinx of Giza, for example, places its construction in a pre-dynastic period, much older than what conventional Egyptology accepts, a reigny period that coincides exactly with the era that the ancient account assigned to Atlantis. This dating, if correct, would provide solid evidence for the existence of a high civilization in that remote era, a perfectly human civilization, but whose legacy was almost completely erased by the catastrophe. These two stories about the origin of Atlantis reflect a fundamental debate about human nature and potential. Are we inherently capable of achieving greatness on our own, or do we require an external uplift, a divine or extraterrestrial intervention? The interventionist model describes an external force that actively creates or modifies humanity to establish Atlantis. It is a top-down Genesis model,
which positions humanity in a state of creation or dependency. Conversely, the human-centered model is bottom-up and focuses on finding evidence of a lost and glorious human history, arguing that our ancestors were far more advanced than our official history allows us to believe.
There are even those who try to build a bridge between these two visions, presenting scientific evidence of a possible genetic fusion, which would suggest an intervention, but at the same time focusing on the need to awaken the innate potential that already resides in every human being. Ultimately, the story of the origin of Atlantis is a battlefield for competing ideas about our own nature. The choice of which story to believe has profound implications for how we perceive the sovereignty, responsibility, and potential of humanity today. Are we children of the stars or lords of the earth? Or perhaps both at once? The descriptions of Atlantean technology, drawn from psychic visions, esoteric texts, and the interpretation of ancient myths, paint a picture of a civilization that had mastered the fundamental forces of the universe, employing methods that today would seem to us a fusion of science and magic, of physics and consciousness. Their technology was not based on brute force, but on the subtle manipulation of energy, vibration, and sacred geometry. The cornerstone of Atlantean technology was the use of crystals to harness, store, and transmit energy on an unimaginable scale. Imagine at the heart of their capital not a palace of stone, but a cathedral of living light. A colossal crystal, sometimes called the Tuaoi stone, that pulsed in unison with the cosmos. It was not an inert gem, but the beating heart of their civilization, a divine accumulator that drank the light of the sun, the caress of the moon, and the deep energy of the earth itself, concentrating them into a focal point of immeasurable power. This crystal energy had an almost limitless range of applications. It powered their vehicles, which moved silently over land, air, and sea, often defying gravity. It allowed for the transmission of voice and images over long distances, analogous to our radio and television, but without the need for cables or satellites. It was used in sophisticated practices of bodily rejuvenation that significantly prolonged life, and in healing techniques that could regenerate tissues and restore the body's balance at a cellular and energetic level. And it was fundamental in construction, allowing for the levitation and manipulation of enormous blocks of stone with astonishing precision. It was a culture entirely oriented toward the crystal, a civilization of light.
The Atlantean mastery extended beyond individual crystals to encompass the manipulation of planetary and dimensional energies. Some propose that the ancients, and particularly the Atlanteans, understood and utilized a global network of energy lines, often called ley lines. The great megalithic sites of the world, such as Stonehenge, the pyramids of Giza, or the temples of the Andes, would not be located randomly, but were deliberately built on key nodes of this network to harness, modulate, and stabilize the Earth's energies. Even further, the concept of star portals is explored as the ultimate Atlantean technology.
It is interpreted that the famous concentric rings of the capital of Atlantis were not simply a physical structure, but a two-dimensional symbol of a three-dimensional vortex, a wormhole, a gateway to the stars. It is postulated that the Atlanteans possessed a science of the soul for ascension and interdimensional travel, possibly using devices similar to particle accelerators to open these portals and transform the human body into a vehicle of light, capable of traveling between worlds. It was a network of portals, both natural and artificial, that connected Atlantis with other dimensions and with their cosmic guides, a network fundamental to their evolution and their purpose on the planet. But the technological mastery of Atlantis had a dark side, a shadow that, according to these narratives, eventually grew to engulf its own light, contributing to its tragic fall. Their mastery over the laws of life led them down the dangerous and arrogant path of genetic engineering. Some sources speak of the creation of things or automatons similar to androids, beings designed to perform manual labor and serve the upper classes, which ultimately created deep ethical divisions and conflicts within their own society. The conflict with the civilization of Lemuria, as we will see, was partly caused by these genetic experiments on the human race, which indicates a deep and fundamental ethical division over the manipulation of life itself, a line that should not have been crossed. And their knowledge of atomic and subatomic physics led them to develop weaponry of terrifying power. It is specifically described that Atlantis, in its last and most decadent stages, acquired nuclear power in the form of an orb, a technology of unimaginable power that, in their arrogance, they turned into a weapon that ultimately turned against them and led to their own destruction.
The story of Atlantean technology is therefore a double-edged parable. It is the story of a nearly divine power to create, heal, and connect, but also of an equally great power to corrupt, divide, and annihilate. An eternal and solemn reminder that knowledge without wisdom and power without love are the shortest path to self-destruction. Reconstructing the daily life and socio-political structure of Atlantis leads us to a complex and fascinating picture. It seems to have been a theocratic confederation, ruled by a spiritually advanced and, according to some versions, genetically distinct elite. The original account speaks of 10 kings, descendants of the god Poseidon, who ruled 10 regions. Modern narratives speak of 12 families, descendants of the stellar genetic experiment, who acted as spiritual guardians. Both versions point to a unified but decentralized government, where each region was under the tutelage of an elite lineage that possessed both temporal power and spiritual wisdom. The society was clearly hierarchical. At the top were these ruling families. Below them, other races or classes of humans played roles as artisans, farmers, and laborers. And at the bottom, as we have mentioned, were those artificial beings or automatons created for servile labor, a constant source of ethical conflict and social division. The education system reflected and maintained this structure. The vast majority of the population received a technical and practical education. But for the elite and those who showed exceptional aptitude, education was much more profound. In addition to conventional sciences, the curriculum focused on the occult sciences, the esoteric properties of plants, metals, and stones, and the alchemical processes of transformation. The ultimate goal was the development of the students' psychic faculties and their mastery of the hidden forces of nature, an immense personal power. But the narrative arc of Atlantis is, in essence, a story of spiritual fall, a Greek tragedy on a planetary scale. In their beginnings, they were a virtuous people, obedient to cosmic laws. Their spirituality was based on the belief that all deities were expressions of a single universal consciousness, which fostered a deep respect for nature and interconnectedness of all life.
However, over time, this purity was corrupted. The divine portion began to fade, says the ancient account. Unable to bear their immense fortune and power, they became proud, greedy, and warlike. They fell from being children of light and wisdom to being children of darkness and slaves to matter, fanatically worshipping form and material power instead of the invisible spirit. This was the central conflict of the Atlantean soul. Were they destined to be spiritual guides for the planet or material conquerors of the world? This internal battle manifested externally in the conflict with their sister civilization, Lemuria. It was not simply a war for territory, but a clash of paradigms, a battle for the soul of humanity. As we have seen, Lemuria followed a path of spiritual development and harmony with nature, with a soft technology based on resonance and consciousness. Atlantis, in contrast, took a course of control, power, and hard technology. The tension between these two opposing philosophies finally erupted. The turning point was the development and use by the Atlanteans of technologies that the Lemurians considered a profanation, weapons of mass destruction, and the genetic manipulation of life. The Lemurians warned the Atlanteans, but in their arrogance, the Atlanteans ignored the warnings, perhaps seeing the Lemurian path as stagnant or naive, an obstacle to the progress and evolutionary destiny they believed they were leading. The confrontation escalated into a war of great dimensions, a conflict of unimaginable scale and destructiveness, which resulted in the annihilation of both great civilizations. The cataclysm that sank Atlantis was not just a natural disaster. It was, according to these chronicles, the direct and karmic result of this fratricidal war. And so we reached the climax of the legend, the fall. The catastrophist school of thought provides a scientific explanation for the single day and night of misfortune of the ancient account, the Younger Dryas period. A comet impact, or a series of them, struck the Earth about 12,800 years ago, triggering a cascade of catastrophes. The heat of the impact instantly melted vast ice sheets, releasing unimaginable volumes of water and causing a global deluge that coincides with legends from around the world. The end of this period of chaos, about 11,600 years ago, aligns precisely with the date the original account gives for the destruction of Atlantis.
The destruction was almost total, but not complete. From the ruins of Atlantis emerged survivors who embarked on the sacred mission of preserving and replanting the seeds of civilization in a devastated world. They are known in traditions around the world as the Shining Beings or the Forgotten Gods. They are often described as a group of different-looking people, tall, fair-skinned, with red or blonde hair, who appeared after the Great Flood. They were master navigators, astronomers, and magicians who possessed the knowledge of the previous world. They settled in strategic locations, from the Andes to the Nile Valley, built megalithic monuments, and taught the surviving humans the fundamentals of civilized society, before mysteriously disappearing, often promising their return. Other accounts tell of a retreat into the inner earth. The Atlantean leaders, after the cataclysm, would have taken refuge in the subterranean world, connecting the ancient portals to form the Agartha network, from where they continue to secretly guide the evolution of the planet. The existence of this lost civilization and its survivors is also used to explain a series of anomalies that challenge our history. The enigmatic elongated skulls of Paracas in Peru, with their physical characteristics and genetic markers that do not seem to correspond to those of Native Americans. The worldwide legends about giants and the numerous historical reports on the discovery of large skeletons, or the controversial three-fingered mummies of Nazca, which some consider proof of non-human beings linked to these ancient mysteries. The fall of Atlantis was not just an end, but also a sowing, a new and painful beginning for a world reborn from the waters. By synthesizing the diverse perspectives of those who have dedicated their lives to this enigma, a portrait of Atlantis emerges that is both grand in its light and deep in its shadow. We are presented with a civilization of possibly stellar origin, endowed with a technology that fused matter and consciousness, and a spirituality that connected it with the cosmos. This civilization reached unimaginable heights of power and knowledge, exemplified by its mastery of crystal energy, planetary energy grids, and the very structure of space-time. However, this power became its downfall. Succumbing to arrogance and materialism, Atlantis abandoned its spiritual purpose, which led it to a philosophical and technological conflict with its sister civilization, Lemuria. This war, along with a cosmic cataclysm that left scars across the entire planet, caused its fall. Nevertheless, its legacy was not completely extinguished. The survivors, the Shining Beings, dispersed throughout the world, sowing the seeds of civilization in Egypt, the Andes, and beyond, leaving behind a trail of megalithic monuments, flood myths, and genetic anomalies that continue to challenge our understanding of history. The search for this lost world is both an investigation of facts and an act of myth-making. The power of the legend lies not necessarily in its literal truth, but in its ability to inspire us to question, to explore, and to guess everything else in the universe. It is an enterprise that stands at the crossroads of science, faith, and the deep human longing for mystery. Ultimately, Atlantis remains a living legend because it functions as a mirror for modernity. Its story reflects our deepest anxieties: technological overreach, environmental collapse, spiritual decay, and the threat of annihilation. But at the same time, it embodies our highest and noblest aspirations, a lost connection with the cosmos, an untapped human potential, and the hope of a return to a golden age. It is the most solemn warning that technological advancement without a parallel development in spirit and ethics is inherently self-destructive. Thus, the search for Atlantis in its deepest form is the search for ourselves. It invites us to look inward and ask, are we repeating the mistakes of our legendary ancestors? Are we allowing our technological power to outstrip our wisdom and our compassion? Or will we choose a different path?
If this journey through the echoes of Atlantis has resonated within you, if it has awakened questions and ignited a spark of curiosity or remembrance, I invite you not to let that flame die out. Consider this not as the end of a story, but as the beginning of your own exploration. I invite you to subscribe to this channel and join our community of consciousness explorers, where we will continue to unveil the mysteries of our past to illuminate the path to our future. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me on this journey. May the story of Atlantis, with all its light and all its shadow, serve as a beacon on your own journey. May it inspire us to seek balance, to cultivate wisdom, and to always remember that the greatest power we possess lies not in the technology we create, but in the love we are capable of expressing. The legend of Atlantis is not just a story about a sunken continent. It is a story about the human soul. And its final message is clear. The power to create a paradise or to unleash a hell resides always within us. The choice is ours. May the unfathomable peace that surpasses all understanding, may the profound wisdom that guides your every step, and may the unconditional love that embraces all and heals all of the eternal ages illuminate and abundantly bless your path now and forever. May it be so.
If you liked this content, hit the like button. Share it with someone who might be interested in this topic, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos.